Welcome. This is Policy to Practice, a podcast by the Center for Development Policy and Practice.
Here we invite experts to break down complex concepts for easy understanding.
This is your guest for today.
Welcome to CDPP's podcast, Policy to Practice. Today we are joined by our very own technologist and serial entrepreneur, the co-founder of Daana Lamakaan, Mr.Ashhar Farahan.
Hello.
Welcome, sir. So let's start with the question. So you marked out that we cannot counter technology in today's age. We have to embrace this revolution and this evolution essentially. So it's being used, AI is being integrated in everything. Up to court cases se leke aapko simple text bhejna hai aapko, if you want to send a text message, it's everywhere. What do you see is the future of this evolution?
So more than AI, we are also going to see that until now, only bits were being moved, right? That is, digital bits, zeros and ones were being moved.
Yes.
But more and more frequently now, you will see that atoms will be moved. Okay. For example, 3D printing. Right. 3D printing, you can actually physically print things.
Yes. Or
right?
Upar, by the way, 10th floor I just saw.
Yes, you saw the 3D,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So increasingly, a lot of manufacturing will move to 3D printing.
Right.
For example, now they are 3D printing rockets.
Right.
They are 3D printing cars. They are 3D printing houses. And the way you think about the new ways of manufacturing is very different. For example, when you're building a house, you build the walls and the floor, and then you dig into them to lay down pipes, right? And electrical wires.
Yes.
Now with 3D printing, it can be done all at once.
Okay.
That is, it will print in such a way that it will leave cylindrical spaces into which you can put wires.
Okay, so precisely.
Right?
Yes,
and
yes.
It will actually 3D print the entire kitchen, sink, and everything together, if you know what I mean, right? Because it can print any shape.
Yes.
It will print commode, it will print the bathtub, it can even print beds while 3D printing the entire house. So there is going to be a huge revolution in all kinds of manufacturing and transport. You see that driverless cars are coming. There'll be driverless trucks after this.
Yes.
Okay, there'll be driverless trains.
Elon Musk is moving.
Elon Musk is not a major player, by the way, in this. It's actually fashionable to say Elon Musk, but I think you see, the people who have got most amount of data are the ones who will win it. For instance, if you see driving data, who do you think has most amount of driving data?
I would say Ford.
No, Google.
Google. Okay.
Because we all use Google Maps to get from place to place, right? When we're driving a car, we put on, right? So I think Google is in the pole position here to do that.
Oh, okay.
But you'll increasingly see that a lot of physical activity is being done robotically, or being done. And when you combine it with AI, then it actually it's a multiplier effect.
Yes. Sorry to interrupt, but that also leads me to my second question. अपने इंडिया में जितनी अपनी तादाद population है, it's a very labor intensive methodology of production we use. अब उसमें अगर आप इतना digital include कर दिए, so there's going to be vast amount of unemployment.
We are looking at that.
Yes.
It's a very dangerous trend, and especially when you're looking at what they call as precision farming, which is actually a euphemism, but the earlier name that they were using it was farmerless farming. That you don't even require a farmer.
Oh my God.
So you could be in a large warehouse-like factory in the middle of the city, and it can grow all the food required for the city inside the factory. Okay. See, for instance, the weather is completely controlled inside it. You don't require sunshine. LEDs will light it up, and they light it up precisely the way you want it to be lit up, right? There'll be no weeds inside it because it's all enclosed space and stuff like that. So we are looking at major revolution in farming, and if we do not know how to handle this technology well, we are looking at a very disastrous society, very dystopian society, in which probably 2 or 3% people control all the machines which produce everything that the mankind needs. But why would they give it away to the rest of the people? Unless there is something they get in return. And those people are people who are incapable of actually contributing anything, because labor is taken away from them. Now
they've been snatched of their livelihood. Essentially. And AI also has this weirdly human characteristic where it
Right.
learns on its own. Now, this is the first time we're seeing something like this.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? It's very dangerous.
So the way AI thinks is it actually doesn't think, it mimics.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, mimics human.
So it's a very glorified form of auto suggest. So for example, when you're writing an email these days,
Right.
it tries completing your sentence,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So what the AI does is it tries completing the full paragraph
Okay.
from the question itself,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And it's basically learning this from the data that it ingests,
Right.
right? So the problem is that it will give you results depending on what data you feed to it.
The prompt.
No, not the
prompt.
prompt, just the data. So it's
Okay.
basically called learning data,
Right.
right? So if you, for example, keep feeding it this data that people of a particular country are bad,
Okay.
and there are 100 articles which you
Right.
feed to it saying that people of this country are bad, and one article or two articles or just 5 articles
Ji.
say that people of this country are good.
Okay.
Then if you ask the question, are the
Ji.
people of this country good or bad, it will
Ji.
say the predominant that they are bad, but there are some good people. You know what I mean?
Ji, ji.
So the bias which will come in the data will
Ji.
come from what you feed to it,
Okay.
and this is the bigger problem that we are
Right.
facing. That, for example, if you go to ChatGPT,
Ji.
if you ask whether Hitler was a good person or a bad person, or was a dictator, they'd say
Right.
yes, he was a dictator.
Ji.
But if you ask it, pointedly whether any of the current leaders are dictators,
Yeah.
it will refuse to answer the question.
Yeah. So
You
there's a
know,
bias for sure.
Yeah, there's a
Yes.
bias for sure.
Yeah. Scary.
Yeah. So AI is not very objective.
Yes.
It's capable of doing certain things. For example, it's capable of writing software,
Ji.
because most of the software that you write uses the same patterns which earlier software
Right.
used. So
Right.
if it just studies a lot of earlier written code, it can probably
Yeah.
put out code which is useful to you.
Right. And as you said, it's mimicking a human brain, and the
Yeah.
human brain itself is very corrupt.
No, it's not mimicking a human brain. That's what I mean to say. It works in a very different way.
Right.
Okay. Now, for example, I'll just give you one example,
Okay.
right? Let's say that you feed it 1 million
Ji.
X-ray results, X-ray
Right.
pictures
Right.
of people's lungs,
Right.
and you keep telling it that this X-ray has a lung which has got cancer in it, and this
Okay.
one doesn't, and
Okay.
this one does, and this one doesn't,
Right.
and this one does, and this one doesn't.
Right.
So once you've fed 1 million pictures to an AI machine,
Right.
then if you show a new one and say,
Right.
do you think that this one has got
Cancer.
cancer? It will guess it very well. It will
Yeah.
guess it as well as the
Right.
best oncologists will do, right?
Okay.
Because it has just been trained on the data, right? But if you turn around and ask it, how do you make biryani? It has no idea,
Yeah.
because it doesn't have any of that knowledge. Now, this AI engine is on a hard disk.
Right.
It takes you about 5 minutes to replicate it
Okay.
and send it off to another hospital.
Right.
So another hospital effectively now has an oncologist,
Ji.
oncology radiologist, who is one of the best in the world.
Okay.
It took you 5 minutes to produce that new
That-
person,
that-
whereas an actual oncologist takes about 30 years to get there.
Yeah.
Right? So replication of knowledge
Yes.
is very easy.
Right.
Replication of the intelligence once it's
Yeah.
produced is easy. So in a lot of ways it's
And
better.
even accessing that knowledge is easier.
Is easier.
आप
Yeah.
top doctor के पास जाने के लिए आपको
Right.
आज 2
Yeah.
घंटे wait
I mean,
करना
for instance, we were discussing yesterday about facial recognition.
है. Right. Yeah.
Now, we recognize about 500 to 1,000 people probably,
Yeah.
as human
Yeah.
beings. But this system, which can, be actually on your phone, is capable of recognizing a million different faces.
Okay.
Right? So, in a lot of ways, it's ahead. In a lot of ways, it's not ahead.
Right.
It's like a calculator, right? If you
Ji.
say is calculator smarter than a human being, in certain ways it is, because the amount of sums that it can do, multiplication,
At the pace it does.
you can't do that.
Ji.
Right?
Ji.
Yeah.
Ji. My final question is, आजकल we are seeing the growth of YouTube and Spotify and all these independent media
Yeah.
apps, and the content creators over there are making their own content which is very separate from the mainstream media,
Right.
which is trying to push its own narrative. Do you
Yeah.
see these platforms as a growing platform or a stage where people can put content out?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. If, for example, YouTube purely went by what people like,
जी.
okay, then that's dangerous as well, because what will happen is more and more radical things will keep coming out. Right? I mean, for example, if somebody tells you that your community is at a disadvantage, it's likely that you will agree with that.
Yeah.
Right? And then if the platform just keeps showing you just those content, okay, and it's in their interest to do it, by the way, because what happens is that way you get hooked onto the content because it is affirming your slight bias into a strong bias. So it's sort of radicalizing you.
And it's views for them.
Yeah, and it's basically views for them. So they are equally pushing, the right wing agendas, the left wing agendas, all kinds of agendas. They're basically, pulling people down into these rabbit holes. And the content creators are actually helping that along, right? And if there are voices of moderations, of reason, reason is very difficult to, content with, whereas passions are very easy to inflame, right? So that's the challenge of social media, that, what you see there, it sort of normalizes extreme views. Right, and there is no check on that. On the other hand, if there was state-controlled media, or if the media belonged to only some select few people who had the privilege of owning media, right? For example, television channels, then they would sort of try balancing between each of them, but they will push their own agenda as well, right? So this is a strong problem of this, and I think the way out of it is that, and this is what DEF is also trying to pursue in a lot of ways, is to educate people to be very critical of everything that they encounter. Right? I mean, you have to assume that anything that anybody says has to be taken with a pinch of salt, and you have to figure out what the agenda behind that is. Right?
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Thank you for giving us time.
Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you.